Oh, hello, we're live. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. Sorry if I was just there for a bit, not realizing that we were actually live. This is my first time doing a Sktchy live, so um, please just bear with me a bit. So, as you know, I'm Kate. I'm streaming in from Canberra, Australia, and it's actually 2 a.m. here at the moment. So I'm afraid that the light isn't excellent. I'm working with lots of artificial light, so unfortunately no natural light here. I hope that doesn't impact your viewing of what's going on too much. So I'm just looking at the comments now. Um, oh, brilliant, some of you here already. Let me know where you're all streaming in from. That would be great. Um, as I said, because it's my first Sktchy live, I'm not exactly proficient in drawing whilst checking on the comments at the same time. So I'll try my best, and I'm sure I'll get a bit better at that as I do more of these lives. So today I'm drawing our muse Claudia in Graphite. You can probably see her in the top left-hand view. And I've selected a reference with more of a figurative leaning today to keep that momentum going from Juan's live last week, as we warm up for Bodies in Motion starting on the 31st of the month. So just before we tackle Claudia, I'll just play a really short overview video to introduce you to that upcoming class in case there's some people here not familiar with it. Hi, seeing everyone saying hi in the comments. Hello to you all. So I'll just play that promo video for you now. Okay, so there we are. I'll be joined by 9 other teachers in that course, and we'll be working in a variety of media. So if you like to sign up, you can also get $5 off with my discount code, which is BIMKate. That might come in useful for you. So let's get back to today's muse, and let's switch to a better view of my drawing so you can see less of me and more of Claudia. There we are. Okay. So just to let you know what I'm working with today, I've got my trusty mechanical pencils. So they range from 2H to 4B leads, and these are Staedtlers. I've also got softer 6B and 8B pencils, and these are generals. And I like to use some of these to draw out some of the darker value contrasts, and also should I like to go in with a darker background at the end, which I am known to do. I've got my trusty putty rubber, and I've also got some graphite powder. This is Langridge, and for this I'm using just a small, clean, unused makeup brush, nothing specialised or expensive here really. And for graphite work that entails more than just a quick light sketch, I always like to use smooth hot press paper with a high GSM value, so that it can withstand plenty of pencil layering and maintain its integrity. And normally I would use some parchment, baking, or even tracing paper to protect my palm as I go in with my graphite to prevent smudging of the work below. I haven't got it here today with me, so I'm just going to have to be really careful, but I would always recommend doing that. I don't like to use tissue paper too much because I find it picks up a lot of the graphite work underneath, and we don't want to undo lots of our hard work. So I'm just going to quickly check in with some of these comments because I know I've been neglecting you all for a couple of minutes. Sorry about that. Can you all let me know if you're seeing the drawing on the large screen and me on the small screen? You're not seeing the drawing on the large screen? Oh dear. How about now? Does that make a difference? Okay, just as I'm just waiting for that feedback to come through, I'm just going to answer this question. Would Bristol Smooth 250 GSM work? Yes, I typically work on 300 GSM and I work with so many layers. So for a pretty intricate sketch, I think 250 GSM would work really, really well. Ellen? Oh, great. Okay, I'm seeing now that that has been switched. Great, thank you so much, guys, for that feedback. As I said before, please bear with me. It's my first try at this, and I'm not great with tech. So thanks, guys, for helping me out there. Am I right in thinking that you didn't get to see the promo as well because of that? No promo. Okay, thank you so much for that feedback, Cheryl. Okay, you didn't get to see it, but it's been linked now. So I won't take up too much more time with that. I can see Sktchy very helpfully put up a link to that. So again, sorry guys, if you just pop into that link that Sktchy's just attached there to the comments, you can see that promo that I missed. And I think I've worked out now that my issue is that I was in preview view as opposed to live. So I think I know what's going wrong now. But onwards and upwards. Let's get back to our drawing of Claudia. As you can see, I've began by putting down a very basic drawing. So I've got the very basic head shape with horizontal lines marking what are considered the classical proportions, if you like. There's a bit of variation in people's assessment of where the classical horizontal proportions should lie, but I typically go with a halfway point for the eyes. So here, halfway point for the eyes, a quarter point for either the tip of the nose or the base of the nose. Here. And then beneath that nose line, I mark the section out into thirds. So as you can see here, this bottom section in thirds, with the top third here, generally marking out a good, at the bottom of this top third here, generally marking out a good midway point for the mouth. Of course, it's always on us to consider how well our subject's features fit with that very general rule and adapt the position of the key features accordingly. But I feel that Claudia's features are working well with it. Thanks, Alison, saying you're not half so lucid at 2 a.m. Thank you. It's a lot of caffeine. And hello from Wales, Angie. Fellow Welsh person here. Lovely to have a Welsh person here. Hi, Angie. Thank you, Rap Mammy. Hello, Kelly. Great to see you all here. So just pop back to my proportions. Let me know if I'm doing okay, checking in with the comments. Trying to remind myself every few minutes. So bearing in mind those horizontal lines that we're using for those classical proportions, which I feel work well for Claudia's features, you'll notice that I've also, for instance, noted that the eyebrow line, Claudia's eyebrow line, fits very well with, or rather meets, that 1/3 section segment that lay below the mouth. So I've kind of assessed that the height of the eyebrow above the midpoint of the eye is about the same of the base of the nose and the midpoint of the lips. So I've gone in and marked in the eyebrows at about the same 1/3 distance above the eyes. So these assessments really are all about laying down those few basic guidelines as a starting point, consolidating that those are as accurate as possible, and then working from those in a very relative and intuitive way. I hope I'm making sense so far. And I am aware that I'm placing a lot of emphasis on proportions here and just those kind of very early guidelines. Some of you may be a bit have that sense of, oh, we shouldn't get too caught up in proportions fanatically, just get on with it. Completely get that point, completely. I get kind of caught up in proportions, so I'm just going to share with you today what I like to do. I hope that's all right. So just move some things out of the way here, just impacting my view a bit. So as we move on from marking out that perimeter of the face, those classical horizontal proportional lines, and then marking in a very basic way our features along those horizontal proportional lines, I then like to use this guide to indicate where our further lines that we see here, marked by the arms, relate to that. So, for instance, after drawing the face, I then noticed that this first horizontal top line of the lower arm sits very nicely next to that bottom nose line, marked at the quarter point of the face. It starts very much in the same point, and then it angles off slightly downwards. So from there, I just mark this line going down. And then from that, as I said, working very intuitively onwards from that. So using very kind of block formations to mark out where the hands are laying, and then the general shape of the arm, and again the same up here. So not too complex at this point, but at the same time not working too rashly in marking out those key lines. It's worth just taking a few seconds just to work out if that line is laying in a comfortable place for you relative to the other lines that we've marked out. So I'm just looking in at the comments again. Do you ever actually measure the proportions on the picture? Mark's asking. I don't measure in the sense of using a ruler or getting into precise numbers like that, but sometimes I do use my pencil rule. So you'll see this a lot in life drawing actually. So where someone is using the pencil to mark out, to look at their subject, mark out the length of the face as they're relative to their view, and then using that guideline and where they're noticing the features on the subject relative to where they've marked out the face on the pencil as we draw along. That's actually that's a technique I actually use in my Sktchy portraits with Kate Higgins class that's just been released. I use that principle actually very strongly in the second lesson of that course. So it might be useful if I just pop an overview of that course there for you if you're interested in those principles. So let's just pop to that overview, course overview, and see if that works this time.
A pencil and a piece of paper. That's all you need to create an extraordinary portrait. Hi, I'm Kate Higgins. I'm a Wales-born, Australia-based artist, and my passion is creating lifelike graphite portraits that convey the vibrant character of my subjects. In this class, I'm going to teach you my process of creating a single intricate portrait in graphite. We'll develop the structure, map out the shadow shapes, and learn how to keep our proportions in check. We'll add values in layers. You'll learn how to use blending to create subtle relationships between values. We'll develop our features through minute observation, and I'll give you tips on how to present your graphite work online. So, are you ready to sharpen your pencil portrait skills? Join me in Sktchy Art School.
Okay. Yeah, I hope that overview video played well for you guys. Let me know if you could see it. I hope so. Hoping for some progress here. So yeah, that's just an overview of my new class for Sktchy. I use that principle of using my pencil to roughly measure features on my subject and then transfer my assessment of those measurements over to my drawing. Here I'm not being as fanatical or precise, if you like, just kind of reversing to classical proportions. But I think both methods work fairly well for different references. Really just depends on your mood on the day sometimes, I guess. Nice comment. I thought you were drawing the rock because she's bald. She'll have some hair soon. Claudia will have some hair soon. Hello everyone joining. Hello from Maine. Hi Sheila. Great video work. Thank you for letting me know. Paint Lady 22 and Sinad. Thank you so much. There we are. So I'm now going to go in and add in some further shapes to further mark out some key features. So if you're drawing along, I hope you've had enough time to mark out those early guidelines. For what it's worth, I can spend a good 20 minutes even just making sure I've got something like this right, or fitting, my standards. So take your time doing that. I think it is a kind of worthwhile practice. And for those of you who are up to where I am now, I'm going to continue adding in some more shapes. So some of you who have taken some of my lessons before, perhaps on 30 Faces, 30 Days, will know that I'm kind of all about adding shapes in to mark out shadow and value shapes. And that's kind of what I'm going to do now. But also, of course, adding in feature shapes, continuing to do that as well. So let's go in and why not? Let's not have Claudia bald anymore. Let's go in and add some hair. So actually going to change over to my lighter mechanical 2H because otherwise these guidelines are going to be a bit difficult to erase or lighten up later as I go in with more detail. So I'm seeing the shape of the hair here as it moves out from the perimeter that we've marked and falling just below the ear. And let's just flesh out the eyebrow just a tiny bit more, because she just got some very abstract lines at the minute and she deserves better than that. So I'm just going to round off these lips because they don't sit in so much a pointed fashion with Claudia here. I want to create that sense of that open mouth here. She's not sitting with a tense closed mouth, but rather relaxed open one. So just add in a little space here. Bring in that corner of the lips there. Mark out that curvature of the chin below. I'm also going to mark out, whilst I'm here, that slight shadow shape that we're seeing to mark Claudia's cheekbone. So I can see here that it sits relative to that starting point of the ear very nicely. So I'm going to start it there and just bring it down. Round off this nose a little. So it has a slight curvature at the end, which I hadn't marked out in my initial drawing. And just round off this outer perimeter of the nose there. Just marking where that delicate shadow falls, marking the edge of the nose there, and as it relates to the eyebrow. And then I think we can round off these eyes a little more. You'll notice here that my approach is very much in setting out proportions for the entire drawing and guidelines for the entire drawing. But I know a lot of people like to draw in a very focused way from one starting point, for instance, on the face. So they'll work from an eye, for instance, draw that out very intricately, and then move on to a next neighbouring area of the face, instead of just setting out guidelines for the entire subject, if you like. So let me know kind of what method you guys are into. It's always interesting to hear that. Yes, there are a lot of ruffles in this drawing, and that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I find it very interesting how, talking about our figure drawing venture that we're starting later in the month, how clothing above the body can so tactfully signify the shape of the anatomy underneath, and that this kind of light chiffon garment that Claudia is wearing does that so beautifully. So it'll be a lot of work there if you're up for it. but worth a try. It gives a lovely effect and a lovely opportunity to practice shadow and blending formations as well. So where was I here? I'm just going to the perimeter of Claudia's face. Doesn't sit in as curved a fashion here. It has a little bit more of an angle. Let's mark out some of these ear shapes. Carol's asking, will we get to see a finished drawing today? So I'm probably going to be here for an hour, and it's we're half hour in. Probably not a finished drawing, but I hope to get a good halfway through, and then I'll put the finished drawing up on my Instagram, and I'm sure Sktchy might share that too, perhaps on stories. Okay, so let's move on to, something that a lot of people find really difficult, I actually find really difficult, is marking out the shape of the hands and that natural way in which those fingers are falling next to Claudia's face. So using the block shape that we've already laid out, I'm going to, let's just create the shape of the arm better there. And then I'm going to create my starting point for these fingers using the features that I've already marked out on the face. So again, that principle of marking your points out relative to the work that you've already done. So I notice in the reference photo that that first top finger here is sitting very well relative to a diagonal line from the corner of Claudia's lips here. So I'm just going to mark that down. Again, I'm seeing that the second finger that points in this direction is very much lining up with the corner of the face here. So I'm using these points as guidelines. I know I'm really milking a point here, perhaps, but I really can't emphasize enough how much that sense of relativity helps as a principle for my drawing. So noticing that the fingers here, these second fingers pointing up, and then this one coming down in this fashion with that crease of the palm there. As we're here, I'm going to continue working around, fleshing out this top, this material on top of Claudia's arm. So we're seeing these creases here, these key crease shapes, adding in these folds. Just checking in again. Angie is asking, I see all those different pencils. Are they different sizes, softness? I missed the beginning. All good. So yes, they are. So I'm using Staedtler Mechanicals, and I'm using 4 different pencils of different diameters, diameter leads, and the softness range between 2H and 4B here. And then my softer pencils are the generals, which are sitting at 6 and 8B. I like to use mechanical pencils for my guideline drawings because it gives a nice precise finish. All good, Angie. Thank you for the question. So working around to this side, the garments, starting to bring in those folds. I'm actually doing this a bit quicker than I ordinarily would in my own time. Normally be a bit more pedantic about getting them in the right position, but we haven't got all that time here, so I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible so that we can get into adding some detail with the shading and perhaps even going in with some of the graphite powder, especially to add to that garment section and add to that nice sense of softness, soft shadow in the garment, marking the darker values there. Right, working round, and now we're getting to this nice interesting kind of overlap of the sleeve and the upper part of the face. So that's going to be interesting to draw out later. It'll be interesting to see if you guys try to capture that sense of lace, which is going to be very hard to do. But full credit to anyone who tries to do that. And then we've worked round again to this hand sitting above Claudia's head here. So let's have a think, a good starting point there. Let's round off that outer shape. So trying to achieve that sense of the fingers falling around and that delicate sense of shape as we meet the wrist onto the arm. Got this diagonal here marking that the edge of the fingers as we see them. We have the thumb here. And I think if we just mark a line here to mark where the edge, the tip of the fingers are ending. It's a bit thicker, isn't it? I always find it quite difficult to get this precise sense of curvature. So we've got the fingers starting off pretty horizontal and starting to curve round as we get to the knuckles, creating that sense of curvature going around there. I often go back and refine that, but I think that's decent for now. And then we have just some lines marking the creases here. Let's just go in and add just the direction of the hair as it's falling. I use H or HB pencil for sketching. Em says she uses the H or HB pencil for sketching. Yeah, I completely understand that. I just like to use a 2H because I do lay down a lot of guidelines and guide shapes for my later values and shadow shapes. And I like to take those off sometimes, and I just find it's easier to do that with a lighter lead. And just before we move on, let's just mark out this very cool earring here, earring shape. Don't want to miss out on that, it's a key focal piece. But this will be, broadly speaking, what my guide drawing, my base drawing will look like before I move on with some detail, some shading. Just noticing here, I want to bring this eyebrow up a little bit so that it meets that sleeve falling on the face a little more. And then let's just mark out that, forgotten to do there, that separation of the sleeve there. Oh, we can see the arm poking through. Okay, I'm broadly speaking happy with that before we move along. Ellen's asking, how much of the guidelines do you take off as you go into details? A lot, actually a great deal. So at this point, actually, it's a really great point to ask that question. I'm going to go in with my putty rubber and look at that first area that I'd like to target with some shading. So let's think about first targeting, say, this side of the face. I actually will go in and mark off my horizontal lines. Can be difficult to do in its entirety, and you actually don't want to push down too much on your paper with your eraser, because that can actually do more damage than good, because erasers can be quite abrasive on your paper. I find putty rubbers are actually some of the best in that regard, but some of the more dense rubbers can be pretty bad. But yes, to answer your question, I'm going in erasing a lot of it, but leaving enough there so that I can just see it with my naked eye. So I'm not sure if you can still pick that up there on the camera, but I'm basically, to you it might look like I'm taking all of my work off, but I'm not. I can still see it very clearly. And I'm then going to start going in with some shading. So I'm just going to quickly remove some of the guidelines from other parts of the face, because I want to go in and add a base layer of 2H value on the face. And then I'll start developing some shadow and value variations on this side of the face first. So the idea for me with this drawing was to use my mechanical pencils for the face and then perhaps go in with my graphite powder for that nice kind of chiffon light material in the top that Claudia is wearing. Might be interesting if you guys are working with graphite powder to go in and do that on the face. Noticing here with Claudia, the value distinctions are not too abrupt. That sense of shadow on the face is not hugely dramatic. There aren't huge contrasts. There's that nice sense of light just sitting on this side of the face, which I'm definitely going to draw out, and help that sense of light on the face here helps to really bring out the precise structure of Claudia's face here. So that sense of a cheekbone as it moves down into the curve and moves out again as we work around Claudia's lips. And I'm going to start going in with my HB, and let's start adding in some shadows. Just thinking, actually, I'm going to go back on my word and stick with my 2H, but just press harder, because we can always add more, but it's harder to take away. So creating that sense of shadow moving down. And then as we want to blend out our shape into the lighter value that we've set down in the face, just easing up there. The more that you work with graphite pencils, and especially mechanical pencils, the more tuned you become to just the big differences that even small changes in pressure make. Noticing a shadow, subtle shadow down here. That's very subtly meeting that cheekbone shadow. I know what you're saying about some artists letting their guidelines show underneath. That can have a pretty cool effect. Maybe I need to break out of my box a bit and try that one day, but definitely I've seen some very cool effects with that. So I'll resolve to do that for my next drawing. I think that would be a good avenue for experimentation for me there. So thank you for that idea. Em's asking, my portraits always look cartoonish. What's a good tip to prevent that? That's a really interesting question. The initial thing that comes to mind there is that I find that when people neglect to integrate small asymmetries into a face, it can look very unnatural. So if your idea of drawing a face, your approach perhaps doesn't consider too much observation, and you just revert to a kind of adoption of, oh well, I'll just apply the mouth and the nose there in a very symmetrical shape fashion. I feel that that can come off as quite cartoonish and a bit unnatural. So what I would advise is just trying to notice your subject's unique, very slight little asymmetries, and that will bring a sense of realism into your drawings in quite a dramatic way. Some shadow underneath the eyebrow there. And here, as I'm moving along the drawing, I'm noticing already where I'd like to alter some things. I want to bring the hairline lower, definitely. So I'm just going to go in and do that. I can find that you can really add a sense of momentum to your drawing by going in and adding the value distinctions where you can see them as a kind of first port of call. It really, just with a kind of quick overview in doing that, you really feel like you're much further along in your drawing, kind of you feel that much closer to a finished effect, and it really does add to a sense of momentum. So I'll just go in and add some of those areas where we do have some value distinctions. So just filling in the eyebrows there. Around the nose. A sense of shadow next to the hands. So it's really interesting actually that marking out the very precise nature of the philtrum, how dramatic an effect, difference that can make to your drawing. And also the distance of the philtrum, so the distance between the top of a person's lip and nose, how fundamental that is to their identification. So I'm noticing here, for instance, that I'm going to want to either bring the lip line down or the nose up a little. and I think it's going to be a bit of a combination of both. So here, not liking how abrasive I've been in going in and marking in the edge of that nose there. Just want to ease up. So I'm going to go in later and refine the eyes here and bring out some detail and some light dimension. But let's move on from the face and start working on some of the shadows down in the neck. Move into the HB now. Absolutely, she has, Ellen says she has some really lovely delicate features such as her freckles, which will convey really well with a more microscopic look. Couldn't agree more. Might actually be useful and save a little time here to utilize a blending stump to bring our values together. So let's see what I've got here. I've got one just sitting there. So let's try using this just to draw out some of these darker values. And let's go in with some work on the hair. Really loving this kind of bowl cut that Claudia's got here. I'd love to be able to pull that off, but that's never going to happen. So in full admiration of this haircut. Taking off those guidelines. I want to create a very general sense of a darker top crown, moving down into slight shadow here, with greater lightness on this left side as we look at it. Of course, we can go in with some darker value shapes as we see them. And just noticing I want to make that eyebrow, that sense of diagonal, a lot more predominant there. And then I'm going to start working down with some strand shapes in a pretty loose fashion. So focusing more on this shadowy area here close to the sleeve. And at this side, really creating that sense of a lightness that's up here. And whereas we worked with with more pressure here with our strand lines and then lightened up as we progress downwards, the strands are more evident in the lower part of the fringe here. So just going to press a bit harder, then as we work around, ease up on that pressure there. And the same on this side, just that sense of darker hair falling in this small section between the falling sleeve and the ear. We've also got this fringe falling down here first, so let's not neglect that. to use a 0.3, 0.5 or 0.7 millimeter lead. So I'm actually with the 2H, I'm using the 0.3. With the HB, I'm using the 0.5. And then with the 2B, I'm using the 0.7. So a combination of all there. Now blonde hair, and especially this kind of platinum blonde, is somewhere where I'd like to go in with a narrow eraser to draw out some highlights. So I'm probably definitely going to do that towards the end. So a couple of you having to leave. Oh, long trip to the hospital. Oh, I hope everything's okay there, Ellen. Oh, I hope everything goes okay. Hope you've enjoyed so far. Just draw this neckline in a little more there. And why not get started on just developing some of these crease shapes in this light chiffon. And let's go in and use the graphite powder for that. I'm very mindful of time. I've gone over the hour already, so I'll just spend a few minutes going in with the graphite powder, which can be hugely messy. So I like to just work from the inner lid and my principle in tackling areas such as this is to, broadly speaking, lay down where we're seeing a value. Can use the graphite powder to retain a sense of line as well if you wish. So trying to retain a sense of line here. Whereas here, I'm going to build up some value and blend out. And then, for instance, in this area, I'm going to go and work on top of that to develop some detail. So just working on top of that to develop a little more value distinction, and then ease the pressure on that to meet the light value of the powder. The same principle here, and then as we go along and do that, we're seeing some very distinct fold shapes develop, but we're also retaining that sense of soft shadow as facilitated by our graphite powder here. And also, I will touch upon with you before we go, again mindful of everyone's time, how I'm going to utilize my very darker value pencils. So here using softer 6B, I've also got an 8B on hand. So I'll use this to go along those very fine areas where I'm seeing very dark value distinctions, such as in this shadow next to the neckline. Working that out. I might then utilize next to that one of my darker mechanical pencils, so my 2B next to that, to blend into, to act as a mid-range rather, to blend into the lighter 2H value that sits next to it. And again, such as an area up here, where I want to draw out that sense of sharp jawline. So really just using it to accentuate those shapes even more. And then I might even go in with my brush to blend those together a little. Not pressing too hard with the brush because that can undo a lot of work. And then I might go back over that again, just one more time, just to ensure that that sense of sharpness is there. And I think with this subject, I'm also going to use the dark value to place on the background. So I'm probably going to go in with this after I leave you guys and fill in the background with this darker value, just because I think it will accentuate that sense of silhouette and some of those soft values that we've applied to the chiffon material that Claudia's wearing. So I'm going to go through and do that kind of all around. So I'm mindful of the fact that it's now been a good hour and 5 minutes, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. So I'm going to leave you with those principles. It's quite a lot, and I'm aware that many of you may have been quicker than me and have a finished product already, and I fully commend you for that. I'm probably going to spend another hour on this, just finishing touching it up and developing these soft lines, soft values on the top and applying a little more detail to the face. I'll share the finished product with you on Instagram, and I'll share it with Sktchy as well. They might share it on their stories. And I'd be interested to see your take on this, on Claudia, if you've indeed had a go. I'm sure I'll see your takes on Instagram. But thank you so much for joining, guys. It's been a learning curve for me, my first Sktchy Live. I'm sure I'll learn, adapt, and get a bit better at answering your questions simultaneously. But thank you so much for your patience. You've all been so lovely. Some really interesting questions, some lovely comments. So thank you so very much. I hope it's been beneficial in some way. Sorry I only got well, maybe even halfway through. But check on Instagram to see the finished version if you're interested. But more importantly, I want to see your versions. So I'm going to say bye for now. And hopefully we'll see you again in a Sktchy class. Don't forget Bodies in Motion starting on the 31st of the month. My portrait in Graphite class is available on Sktchy as well. Or maybe in a future 30 Faces, 30 Days or live, who knows. So I'll say goodbye, guys, and I'll see you next time.